should say. Oh, there we are. We are live. I'm super excited to be joined by three high-ranking Adidas officials today. I'm super excited, really, to just have a conversation with you guys. Obviously, like when you think of the sneaker industry, you think of like just how do I get into this giant that is the sneaker industry, and how do I get a brand to really realize like what is like how do I get in, and how do I get my resume into the right person's hands. So I'm super excited to talk to the three of you about just that and answer any questions that may be come to fruition or anything like that. But before we get into questions, do the three of you, let's start with Collin first. Collin, do you want to start off by telling people like who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure.
How you got started?
Yeah, let's do it. Well, first, thanks everyone for being here. I know it's always fun to join, Zoom University and be on another part. So appreciate the time. So I'm Collin Lashway. I've been with Adidas for about 6.5 years. I am a university recruiter. We call it Future Talent. So joined our Future Talent team officially in January, but was kind of working on some projects and stuff with the team prior to that, which is how I met Bernadette and Nick. So been with the brand for a little while, kind of started as an intern myself. So a lot of the stuff that I work on now, basically I went through it 4 years ago. So, and even before that, I worked retail. So it's been a pretty fun journey to be in the brand. And I know we'll probably cover some more of those topics a little bit later on, but Portland native, born and raised, didn't really stray too far from home geographically. Still live here in the city, and just love that I get to work for Adidas and really excited to be here.
Awesome. Yeah. Bernie, you want to give it a go?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Bernadette, but you can call me Bernie. I am originally from Baltimore, Maryland, and I moved out here in around 2018 for the job. Currently, I'm working as an art director and designer on the global brand design team, which is kind of like our internal advertising team. And I also started out as an intern. So I've also been through the process of figuring it out and figuring out where my career is going to go and how to get into everything. So yeah, that's me.
Nick, I think you're the last one here.
I was going to say, I think that leaves it to me. So I am Nick Ziemer. I have been with the brand for just over 5 years now. I'm originally from Chicago, went to school there, grew up there, moved out to Portland probably about right around the same time, so just about 5 years ago. I didn't move out here for the job. I moved out here and then found the job. So I work on a team within Adidas that focuses on 3D. It's called the Advanced Creation Technologies team. So we do digital and 3D from beginning to end of our pipeline.
Nice. That's awesome. You three have such like creative roles, and it's super dope for people to anybody that's listening or anything like that, just to hear the different types of roles. Because when you think sneakers, and we run into this a lot, when you think sneakers, it's like, oh, you can only design a sneaker. You can't kind of be a recruiter. You can't do digital marketing. You can't be anything else, but you can, and it's just cool uncovering those opportunities. So before we get into the next question, I do want to hit something with Collin. And you said you were an intern, and Bernie, both interns at Adidas. How did that come about? There's a lot of college students right now. I was one of them, applying like crazy, trying to get into this conglomerate, and I would hear back, but it was the email saying I wasn't chosen. So how did those opportunities come about?
Yeah, I think my opportunity came up like really organically, honestly. Like I was, we did it a little bit differently back then in 2017, but I was a junior in college actually, and I applied for an internship program, applied for 2 roles. I was working in the store and I was like, I got an in, right? Like I work literally at the campus, like I've got it made. Applied for 2 roles as a junior and actually got declined for the first two things I applied for. Then as a college senior, I was like super bummed. I loved the brand. I loved my job. had that goal in mind, but actually, faced rejection like every, most students do. So approaching my senior year, I was actually at a university like alumni event and met an alumni from our school who's actually still on the recruiting team. Her and I just kind of met afterwards. She mentioned Adidas. And so we just kind of struck up kind of that network there. And then I had another friend who worked at Adidas. She's a year older than me. So she came into the store one day and shop, and we did one of those, like, I think I know you, we go to school together, and we used to. So just through, those two networks and those two friendships, just kind of, they led me into kind of the application process. And then we're like, hey, I know you're a senior, you should still apply for the program. Back then, again, it was a little bit different. So very organic. It came up through networking and kind of knowing people, and was really, really fortunate to have some friends kind of, looking out for me, but still went through the application process. After being rejected, I was still kind of nervous about it, and then landed an internship from there. So I was really, really blessed, really fortunate for that opportunity, but definitely had some, network and some friends looking out for me, which really helped. So yeah, that's a little bit about my journey. But
yeah, I kind of just fell into the opportunity as well. My college for career studies, is a design school in Detroit. They invite college recruiters there, I think every so often. And Adidas sent recruiters, but they were actually looking for industrial design students. But I majored in illustration. So that's kind of like a funny path to where I am now. But me and a couple of illustration students were like, hey, can we just get some time on your schedules? Like, we just love to show you our portfolios. We don't really know what it's going to lead to. And yeah, just from them taking a chance and putting me in a kind of on an art direction team as an illustrator and seeing what I could do. That's kind of how I ended up on the team back in 2015, actually, was my first internship. I actually did 2 rounds of internship. Well, I guess technically 3 rounds of internships before I got a full-time position.
Wow, that's crazy. And then, like, Nick, you're just in Portland and an opportunity falls on your lap, or like, were you actively seeking a role at Adidas or at any type of footwear company in Portland?
So actually, I was not looking for a footwear company or anything like that. My background is not footwear. I'm not a footwear designer. Like, that's not my thing. I was actually working in advertising. So I worked at an ad agency in Chicago doing, 3D artwork for print stuff for Bose headphones and, Gillette and Under Armour, stuff like that. And decided I wanted to change things up. So I decided to quit my job in advertising and just move out to Portland because it was a place I've always wanted to live, and just kind of took the risk and did it. And then was searching job boards and was not really finding much. I felt really confident before I moved out to Portland. I was like, I feel like my portfolio is great. I feel like I'm going to be able to do this. And then I got out there and I almost like instantly regretted my decision, because I was like, man, I am like not finding anything. I'm like scared to death now. I'm like applying everywhere. But then I came across a job posting for a 3D designer for Adidas and applied for it. And the rest is just kind of history, honestly. It was really, I have to say the amount of burden that jumped off my shoulders after that was like insanely immense. It was crazy.
Wow, that's crazy. Like, each of you have such like, oh gosh, what's the word? I'm just going to use crazy stories, just landing that role. And there's so many people on this right now that are thinking like there's only that one way in, but in reality, there's a back door, there's a side door, there's so many doors in this huge conglomerate that is Adidas or any other brand out there that you can open. It's just kind of finding which door it is. So let's talk a little bit. Let's ask or answer somebody's question. I'm going to take the first question that was in, and I think Collin, you might be the first one, or the right one to ask. Is Sarah Troy asked, what makes a resume stand out? And then from a portfolio side, what makes it stand out, Bernie. So one of you guys can go first, and then the other one can go next.
Collin, you want to go first, and I'll come in after.
Sure. So, yeah, I thank you for the question, Sarah. I think there's, in my perspective, is there's no like one way to do a resume well, but there's a lot of ways not to do it well, if that makes sense. So I think that when you're looking at a resume or a portfolio or a website or any body of work that you're presenting, I think in an application process, as a recruiter, and I know a lot of our team would probably echo this, is authenticity really shines through. And so think about what's the story you want to tell and who do you really want to convey in that resume. There's a lot of tactical ways you can do this, a lot of verbiage you can use and kind of templates and formats and things like that. But I think really just sit down and look at your resume and make it who you are and make sure that your voice is really shining through in that. So whether that be, if you have a bio at the top, kind of adding something personal about yourself there, like what do you like and what are you into outside of work, and I think your resume is a great opportunity to show the experiences you've done and kind of the skills you bring to the table. But then with those other bodies of work, like a portfolio or a website, that's a great opportunity just as a recruiter for us to see, okay, who are you? And kind of what makes you who you are, what makes you tick, what are you interested in? And, when we recruit, especially for our internship program, we do things a little bit differently than corporate, but we really try to look at the holistic, view of a candidate. And we're not just looked at for, okay, what are those technical skills that you can bring to the table, but what are you motivated by? Like, what are those things that you're really interested in outside of, again, kind of those skills? So your resume, I think, tells that story, but there's a lot of kind of creative and authentic ways that you can kind of show up within that resume, and it's a great opportunity to do that. Again, we could probably have a whole separate call about all those things, but just I think taking kind of a 30,000 foot view of it and just saying, like, what's the story I'm telling and what's kind of that authentic message that I'm portraying, and are you happy with it? And I think that's kind of first and foremost where to kind of start. But Bernie, what do you think about like portfolios and things that you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, I'm basically going to mirror a lot of things you said, even when working with you when we were going through applicants. The portfolios that stood out, along with the resumes that stood out, were the ones where you could see the person shine through the most. Of course, in a portfolio, you need some kind of technical skill. You need to show that you are capable to some degree, but it's not always the most technically acute portfolio that's going to be the one that gets the position. A lot of what stood out to me in overviewing portfolios was, let's say you have a prompt from your professor, right? It could be a basic prompt. Let's say it's like an advertising prompt or like a packaging design prompt. But did that person take this opportunity to tell a larger story? Did that person take this opportunity to use this basic prompt, but then infuse themselves in it somehow? And I know it's hard to do like personal projects, especially if you're a student or you don't have a lot of work experience. But if you do any type of like self-motivated project, or if you take these design prompts and kind of use them as a way to tell your authentic story, that's what really makes you shine through. Yeah, and that's kind of your best bet, because like your individual story is your kind of superpower in these things, right? Like anybody can draw a really cool shoe, but did you make it yours?
And that's such a good point. And if I could add just one thing too, is we talk about having a growth mindset a lot. You'll kind of hear that buzzword thrown around a little bit, but for us too, when you're like looking at that stuff, it's what did you learn from that experience, right? So, whether it be freelance work or just projects you pick up on the side and stuff like that, it's really cool to see like what you can do, but in a portfolio, in a website, on a resume, if you can tell what are those things that you really learned and took away from that experience, that's super impressive, right? Because it shows not only that you're doing the work, but you're also attentive to kind of the journey it takes along the way. And so I know that, between Nick and Bernie and I, when we were sitting down for some of their internship roles this summer, we were looking at that stuff. It's like, can this person kind of show and exude that growth mindset and that motivation kind of beyond their technical skills? And that's kind of the foundation, but how do we build from there? So yeah, I love that point.
I love it. So I want to talk about education really quick. And specifically, like we have programs like Yellow Brick in Sneaker School where somebody can go in, like myself, and I got a certificate in a year and I kind of did the hard work and use that certificate to put me in the right positions. And then you have people that are going into four-year universities and looking for something in marketing with Adidas or product management with Adidas or anything like that. So is there something that, is there like a preference from the Adidas side? Like when we're looking at education, are we looking at, hey, is there a 4-year degree here? Or is somebody doing the work within whatever degree or certificate that they have to show that they're really committed and they have that growth mindset?
Yeah, I think that that we're starting to kind of see a transition in that space. You know, we're as a team, just as a broad TA team, we're trying to step away from that years of experience requirement, you know, and sometimes if it's like, you know, managerial role, like obviously that experience is really important. And there's some of those things that are kind of required, but for the most part, you know, especially with entry level roles, like we're trying to get away from those traditionally hard and fast requirements, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's ridiculous that entry level roles have like 5 years required. It's like, how can you get it if you don't have the experience? That's a cycle that never ends. So, you know, for us, I think when we're looking at some of those kind of requirements, we're putting that on the back burner and we're focusing more on what can this person do and where have they been able to show that they can do that before. So whether it be a certificate program, whether it be prior internship experience, or whether it just be in a project you worked on in a classroom, right? All of those are so valuable in their own right. So again, it goes back to like, how can you tell that story to convey that you learned something from that experience, that you were able to show what you can do and kind of your skills and what you brought to the table through that experience. And so again, it's also, you know, good work as a recruiter to go back and kind of check our bias and check ourselves, right? Is now we're trying to look, you know, not just at those educational requirements, but also, you know, how are we kind of breaking down barriers to allow for more access into the industry that's considered untraditional, but my hope is in the future it's more of a norm, right? So it's a journey that we're on. We're just kind of in the first few steps of that, but the cool part is that conversation's happening, you know, and that's super important. So.
I love that. I really do. What want to get Nick involved a little bit. So if you can, what, like, obviously you weren't looking for a role in footwear, but now that you've been in footwear, what should people know about the industry? And then we can give the other two their time to shine too.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that I've noticed, particularly in the last 5 years since I've started at Adidas, is there's a big shift towards digital, especially going forward now. Like, you know, there's so many things that are being designed in, you know, VR now. Like, you know, there's stuff like Gravity Sketch. There's all these really new ways of designing. There's Flow 3D for apparel. There's, you know, Rhino for footwear design. There's so many different ways that people are designing these days that it's not just, you know, being able to sketch a shoe, which is, you know, crazy important, but you know, some of the things that, you know, we look for, especially on a digital side, is the people that are, you know, trying out these new avenues of design. They're not just, you know, once you get down those fundamentals, that's super important, but then, you know, experimenting, going outside, testing out those new technologies, that stuff is, you know, it's crazy how fast the industry is adopting these new design tools, and then also how fast they're coming out. So it's like every year there's like, you know, huge steps in how these things are, you know, being rolled out, how they're becoming way more affordable. Like VR headsets, you know, 5 years ago were crazy expensive, but now you can get them for like, you know, a couple $100. You can have one and you don't even need a computer to hook it up to anymore. So there's like all these new technologies, these things, they're making their way into the industry a lot more. So there's a lot more roles for, you know, 3D designers in, you know, footwear and apparel and stuff like that, which is, you know, when I was first starting out, it was kind of the groundwork was being laid. That was kind of what my first role was helping lay these groundwork. So going out and training designers on how to use these tools and how they could fit into their workflows. And over the years, they're now becoming adopted. So now you're seeing a lot of these people coming out of schools or, you know, courses that are utilizing 3D. So they're using, you know, Keyshot to do renders and things like that. And you're seeing a lot more of these designers having these, you know, kind of digital or 3D experience, which is a really cool thing to watch.
That's awesome. Collin?
No, that's Nick nailed it. That's great.
Bernie, do you have anything?
Would you actually mind restating the question? I got so lost in what you were saying.
You are good. So is there something that you would tell the people that are on right now about what they should know about the industry from the inside looking out?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting kind of coming from like an advertising viewpoint on it, because like I can't like recommend programs or anything like that, but I think in like an advertising mindset and like a storytelling mindset, I think globally and just socially, we're recognizing the need to be more authentic and tuned into what's actually happening and acknowledging the variety of culture and the realities of culture. And this even seeps into the shoe industry and the advertising industry. So I think you have to have an inherent interest in telling authentic stories and finding different ways to tell those stories, whether it's a photo shoot, whether it's, an interview series, whether it's videography. Like, you kind of have to have a really well-minded, well-rounded mindset in order to kind of be competitive in this space and to really get something out there that's meaningful. And that can be in relationship to a shoe, it could be in relationship to an athlete or the culture that athlete comes from. You kind of have to think about it all.
Interesting. So there's Bernie, to kind of build off of that, the culture side. There's a lot of Yellowbrick students and people that are really out there that are trying to get into brands and trying to get into Adidas that are Black women or Black or brown in general. And when they look at the brand, they don't really see themselves in there. Can you say something on that? Like, how do you feel as a Black woman at Adidas?
I mean, that's a reality, right? It's an old German company started by a white German man. like that's what it is. Now, do I think the conversation is being had to change that, to diversify that? Yes. Are they anywhere near close to, reflecting the realities of their consumer base? No. And just speaking for now, a young person, a young Black woman, a young Black, brown, POC, any type of minority person trying to break into the industry, you are going to be extra minoritized. Like, it is often, it's not unusual for me to find myself being the only woman in a conversation and the only Black person in the conversation, So that is something that you're gonna have to face. I don't think it should be a deterrent though, because if we find ourselves with the good fortune to be in these positions, we should definitely be trying to pave the way for more people who look like us, who sound like us, who come from our backgrounds to also be in these positions. And the reality is, like, they need more people behind these doors who look, like I said, look like their consumer base, who look like the people who come from the cultures that they're trying to sell to. And they need to invest in this. So, it's an ongoing kind of struggle, an ongoing reality. It gets really interesting at times, but I very much appreciate the position that I'm in, even though, I had to deal with those realities.
I just had on David Gibson, who's a part of another brand that won't be named, but I just had him on my podcast, and he said something on my podcast that was interesting. He said, I asked him, I said, like, when it's all said and done, what do you want? Like, what impact do you want to leave in his current role or in his career in general? And he said he wants to just be known for sending the elevator back down, but then also creating a community within said brand to have multiple elevators going back down. So I love your answer. That's amazing. To go back, to take a couple steps back. Sorry, that went way too deep, way too fast. I think what's interesting, Bernie, you said a lot of good things. You said a lot of good things about portfolios earlier. And I wanted to get Nick's take on portfolios, because portfolios, everybody thinks portfolios are like art and you have to draw, and from the outside eye it's definitely an art director type of thing. I need this. But from a digital marketing side, it's extremely necessary. So I'm going to I'm going to ask you one of the questions, which is what happens when you are just starting out and you don't have a portfolio to build out? Would you recommend just kind of working on your own thing and building out a portfolio yourself?
Absolutely. I would 100%. Like, that's one of the things that I did when I was starting out was, take on those passion projects, take on those things that you've had in your head, collaborate, reach out. There's tons of, go on Reddit, go somewhere, post an idea, be like, or ask people for ideas on something like Reddit, be like, can somebody feed me some ideas? Like, I'm looking for something. Or like, if you look at my portfolio, I still have stuff on there for that was spec work. For some of the stuff I did for Gillette it was work that I put up there to show Gillette that I could do something like they wanted, like their ad. So it wasn't even like I was not commissioned by Gillette to do the work. It was something like, hey, I think I can make an ad that looks like the ads that you have. Like, let me prove it. So here's like my proof of work that I can do it. And we would do lots of stuff, even like that inside of an agency. We would do things like that to show that we could do the work, we could meet their bar. And I would say that for anyone starting out is, find the brands that you really are passionate about or you really connect with, and look at their ads that they're doing, or the shoes that they're creating, or the apparel that they're doing, and let that kind of inform some of your design. Show them that you can design in a similar style, show that you can, you have that reach, or anything like that. It's really about, like, I think those are the things that are really going to set you apart as well. Is it's, especially if you're just coming out of college, it's you and your whole graduating class are going to have a really similar portfolio, because you had all the same classes, you had a lot of the same assignments. So the things that are really going to set you apart are those passion projects, those things that you go above and beyond. You do your work assignment, plus you go out and you do your own passion projects as well. So you now have, maybe twice as much work as your peer next to you. And those are those things that, even if it's close with somebody, like if I'm looking at a resume or a portfolio of somebody and they have really similar experience, or maybe someone has more experience, but this other person has a portfolio where they showed that they went out and they tried a whole bunch of new things, they tried some different techniques, like they continued to keep learning outside of like a set career path. That makes a big difference, to show that you're willing to try new things, you're willing to put in the work, you're that person that, like, you're not just the person that gets one assignment and says they're done. You're the person that gets the assignment, does it, and then continues to keep working to like hone your craft. And that stuff really, really shines, and it really matters going forward. And that's probably the best advice I can give anybody is, do your passion projects, do the work that you want to do. And because that's the type of work you're going to get. So like, if you're doing, if you're a 3D designer like me, like do the work that you want to be working on. Or if you're a shoe designer, like design around the companies that you want to work for, because that's usually the role you're going to probably end up getting, or those are the freelance works that you're going to end up starting to get, are the ones that you are passionate about, not just like, I'm doing this just because I think it would look good on my portfolio. You should do the things that you're passionate about, because that's what's going to attract people towards your work.
When we talk about passions, Cortez is asking a question on Adidas's work culture, and it seems like the three of you both have passions outside of Adidas, and I hope you do. I hope I'm right. But if you don't, that's great. You love your jobs. So when we talk about work culture, Adidas is always brought up, especially the Portland headquarters, like as a fun environment to work in and everything like that. So the three of you want to go into like what your favorite parts about that culture really is, and what really stands out to you?
Sure. Yeah, I think one of my favorite things, at least when I first started, was like, man, the amount of like cool little parties that got thrown like in the beginning. So much fun. Like that was like something I wasn't used to. Like we used to, like during the summer, it was like, like every Thursday during the summer, they were like having something, and it was like free beer and like free food. They'd like bring in athletes, and like it was super cool. And coming from a smaller company, when I was working in advertising, like we would still have some of those things where like, you'd have happy hour on Fridays and stuff, but this was like on a whole nother level where it was like, thousands of people out in the courtyard, like, kicking around giant soccer balls, and, like getting free beer and food, and just getting to hang out during work hours was super fun. They do, since it is a big company, you can feel like you're not really seen as much as like, if you're working at a smaller company, where the company I was coming from was like 10 people. So it was like, really easy to know everybody and know everything. And when you're at a larger company, you kind of lose that personal effect. But I think one of the things that I did always like about Adidas is that you did kind of feel like they were looking out for their employees every once, like, they felt like, it's summer, like have some fun, like, get out, there's summer hours, like, on Fridays, it's like a half day, like, you run for the ocean. They used to do these design expeditions where you can go camping with them and like go float the river and like do these things that allowed you to like bond with your community and build a community around, work, which was really cool, which was something I always like appreciated about the brand.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I'll just riff off of that. I mean, I think they are really invested in getting their employees to create solid friendships, which, always makes working with someone way better. And to another point, kind of relating back to our previous topic, they also have internal groups called ERGs at the company, which are employee resource groups. So there's a Black employee resource group, there's a Latinx employee resource group, Asian American, LGBTQ, and I'm sure a few that I don't know about right now. But that's also sort of reinforcing a sense of unity at the company, especially with our minoritized groups, in addition to all the parties and like really making sure everybody feels like you can go up and talk to someone. Like, I really never felt, I mean, I felt a little intimidated, but not super intimidated to like go up to the director of my department, because I had seen him like grab a beer at, one of the little parties or whatever. I've seen him like go for a run or something like that. So that's also something I appreciated. Like it's fairly easy to network internally as well, which is also, I think, very important in terms of where you want to drive your career.
Definitely.
I was even just thinking too, like one thing I love is kind of this like just relaxed, non-competitive internal environment. Like obviously as a brand, like our one of our missions is to like be the best sports company, sportswear company in the world, right? But there's this really big sense of just wanting to build community, and when you talk about reaching back to the next generation, right, and helping the next generation kind of get to where you're going and stuff. Like I remember thinking, like being an intern, putting coffee chats on people's calendars, like randomly. I've never like, hey, I know you're this director of whatever, like, please help me. I just want to get 20 minutes of your time. And I never got anyone that told me no. And they were like, let me help you. Let me answer your questions. And I remember being like floored at how just accepting and collaborative these employees were. And I was like kind of wide-eyed and innocent, right? But was really just impressed at this culture of like, we need to help each other out. And it doesn't serve me well to knock you down a couple pegs to make myself look better. Like that's just not our company culture. There are some times where you have to just kind of put your head down and get work done, right? And kind of make tough decisions. Like that's a part of it. But this, idea of kind of that internal competitiveness, like I've never felt that in my current job. Like as recruiters, we're not trying to fill more roles than the other person, whatever. It's like, let's just get the best talent for the roles we have open, and let's be highly collaborative and really just work together as a team. And so even as an intern, I saw that, and even in the last couple of years and, being in recruiting, that I don't feel this pressure to work, 8 to 5 and, work my, my hands to the bone or whatever and stuff. It's like, you can work hard, but you can also play hard too, and whether it's getting involved with ERGs, to Bernie's point, or the happy hours and the, the run for the oceans and all those fun events and stuff, it's just that time where employees can come together as a group and really celebrate some of our successes and stuff. I have so many stories from over the years, like we all do. So that's kind of where my mind goes with that question, is just that kind of highly collaborative, not super competitive internally culture that we have. So yeah.
Sounds amazing. What I have a question from Brennan. He's an engineer in the sneaker industry already, and is product management certified. So he's wondering what the best way to get noticed by Adidas or Reebok, whether it's his resume or anything like that. What would the three of you, what would be the first steps that the three of you guys would take?
Yeah, I'll start that one off, but I think there's a lot of ways to get noticed. Thank you for your question first off, but there's a lot of ways you can noticed right now. And I keep reflecting on the question you asked earlier, what students should know about the industry today. And I'm trying to connect some dots here. And one of those dots I'm connecting is the fact that the insight and kind of the access that you all have as young career professionals and as students to a company like Adidas is bigger now than ever, right? Like, thinking about LinkedIn, even just take that as an example. The fact that right now you can connect with so many people across the industry within minutes, you can find who someone is, their work experience, what they do, and send them a personalized message literally within 5 minutes. And so I think when you're starting to kind of think about how do I stand out, one of the ways within that is kind of networking, but also just kind of, employee referrals is another great way to get kind of your foot in the door. Resume is awesome. That's how our recruiters are kind of gonna do that first assessment. But if we have employees that are coming to us and are saying like, hey, just for what it's worth, here are my 2 cents. Here's a quick referral of a friend of mine or someone who I connected on LinkedIn who just really impressed me from my conversation with them. Here's their name, like look out for them. To us, that goes a long way. Again, because our employees are trying to look out for others. And so that referral, I think, is a really great way to stand out. And so utilizing some of those resources and kind of those things at your fingertips that you can access now, like a LinkedIn, is a great way just to expand your network, to get to know people and to kind of build those relationships. Because ultimately, those are some ways that you can kind of start to see some momentum within the application process. Again, we could do a whole resume workshop, we could do a workshop, but trying to stay away from that a little bit. But kind of that relationship building is one way that is super, super important.
Interesting. So I have a question from Chase Anderson. He's from Utah State University Outdoor Product Design and Development. Wow, that was a mouthful. Thanks for joining us, Chase. He's asking how important are Adidas campus visits, in person and virtual, to helping you identify future talent for internship or full-time positions. They pride themselves on bringing guest speakers and recruiters to meet in with students, and the students really love the face-to-face type of thing. But I think the way he's going about this is how important is the campus visits versus recruiters actually going to schools to actually sit down with these students.
Yeah, I think it's Chase. Thanks for your question too. There's a balance to that, right? Because I think a lot of it is it's fun to see the campus, right? To see our village, to see kind of those cool benefits, right? Like get a tour of the gym, and we have some beautiful new buildings that I just can't wait to hopefully go see sometime in the near future. But yeah, I think that's great. That's a great benefit to get that FaceTime like at Adidas or on campus. But yeah, attending those career fairs and things like that, like those events are really helpful. And as sometimes tough as they are, right, as a student, you don't really want to spend your Friday night going to a Q&A panel of industry professionals and whatever. You'd rather just go like hang out with friends. Like I get that, but sometimes those events can provide such valuable insight and into the industry. And so someone from Adidas could come and speak to you, whether it's someone from my team or a hiring manager. Those events are really important. So I wouldn't focus too much on where it is. It's fun to see our campus, and it's fun to see kind of those benefits of our physical working environment sometimes. It's a huge benefit of working at the brand, but a lot of the insight and a lot of the kind of advice you'll get from other events are just as important. So it's a 50-50 balance of both. I don't know if that avoids your question or answers it, but it's just a little insight there.
So obviously design is extremely hot, as we were talking about earlier. The fact that when most people are thinking about the sneaker industry, they're thinking sneaker design. They're not thinking about all the different opportunities, because honestly, for lack of education, not everybody is educated to all the different opportunities within the industry. So can we talk about those opportunities that might be? You don't have to just study design. You don't have to just study industrial design or art or anything like that. You can study different things and still be involved with Adidas.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
I mean, go ahead.
No, go for it. Go for it.
But yeah, so you have to think about like Adidas is creating shoes within like an ecosystem, right? There's like the shoe itself, but then there's the marketing around the shoe. There's the photography, there's the videography, there's the copywriting, there's the color materials production, there's, the whole manufacturing process. There's a 3D process that Nick works on. Like you had to think about like, what all does it take to bring this shoe to market? And there are thousands of jobs within each of those. Like I'm still kind of in the realm of design, but not shoe design. So like I said, I studied illustration, but I ended up doing graphic design and art direction. And then on my team, there are copywriters, photographers, illustrators, animators, and video editors. So even within just one little pod, and there's multiple people who do all those roles. So even that is all design, but none of it's footwear design. So if people can start thinking like that too, and just expand a little bit, there's really so many more opportunities, even though footwear design is super dope.
Yeah, I mean, I would absolutely echo that. Like, I had that same feeling when I was coming out of school. Like I was studying animation and I thought it was like, you work at Pixar or you don't get a job. Like I thought it was like, like that's the only industry that you can work in is like film. And, my first job that I got was actually doing print work for advertising. Like I was like, why didn't I think that was a thing? And then there was like, brand design stuff. But then, it's the same kind of feeling like when you look at Adidas is like, it's more than just designing a shoe or just designing apparel. There's teams of people that work on every, new shoe that comes out, or every garment that gets created is like, it's a team of people that are doing that. So there's so many more opportunities. And yeah, there's like tons of software stuff. Like even if you're like a programmer in computer science, like like we build a lot of 3D software. Like we build a lot of plugins for stuff. So we're looking for programmers and people with computer science backgrounds and art backgrounds and like actual physical sample making. There's sewing, like there's so many opportunities out there outside of just being a designer. And yeah, I think that's a great question, because it is super easy to just be like, there's only one way in, and it's being a designer, and that's the only way you get to where you're going. But there's so many more opportunities.
It's actually funny. When I was just thinking of I had a conversation when I first started in recruiting like 3.5 years ago, and being in HR, you don't really think of like being in a creative role, right? Izzy, I love how you opened the call. You call this all creative, and I appreciate that, because you don't get called creative all the time, but we are creative. But it was funny because when I first started TA, I was talent acquisition. I was like, man, if I could go back to school, like I would love to do product development. Honestly, I would probably want to do something in textiles. Like it'd be so fun to like work with product and stuff. And then I saw like a really cool commercial we put out, and I was talking to one of my colleagues about it, and I was like, dang, that would be really fun to work on that project and be really close to product like that, And they said, well, yeah, but we get to hire the people who work on those dope projects. And so even in a non-product facing role, right? Everyone in the brand has a piece of the pie and we're all successful in the way of like making things work. We're all a cog in the wheel, and whether it be in finance or IT or HR, or you're in a footwear design role, like everyone has a part to play in that. And so thinking about creative roles and stuff and product facing roles, yes, some of those kind of cool titles and stuff are out there, but there's so many roles out there that you might not think of, that might not be top of mind, that they play a part in the success in that. So even in recruiting, right, even in HR, you have a really big part to play in making product hit market and stuff. So anyways, just made me kind of think about that conversation from way too long ago, but it's an interesting point.
It's crazy that this is even brought up because my brother just graduated from college with a finance degree, and he's like, oh, I have to join a firm. And I was like, that's cool. I mean, sounds great. Like, I've never been good with numbers, to be honest. Like I half the things he tells me just go straight over my head. But I was like, there's got to be other roles. Like, you don't want to work for a brand or something. He's like, can I? I'm like, you have a degree in it. I'm asking you, like, and after a few weeks, he found out, like, wow, I can work. He's in Chicago. I can work for the White Sox in finance, still to do the same damn thing, but I'm working for a company that I think is cool rather than working in house. And for lack of better terms, just hating his job because he was not really passionate about the overarching goal, which Adidas, you're sitting in your position and you're saying, wow, I would love to do that. But then, like, that one thing that you're told just like almost like is the last piece of the puzzle and shows people like, hey, or shows you like, hey, this, you are a piece of this. You just have to look at it differently. So I love that. We have about 14 minutes and I want to talk about this campaign that you guys are currently working on, which is called Impossible is Nothing. And when you said it earlier, the first name that came to mind was Kevin Garnett, and that's because of who I am, and early 2000s 90s basketball came to mind immediately. So does someone want to go into what is the current day Impossible is Nothing, and why is it so like exciting right now?
Bernie, you might be closer to that than right.
I was going to say, you did like a really good like summation earlier, but so our Impossible is Nothing campaign is kind of like basically kind of showing the sort of humble beginnings of a lot of our athletes and our biggest collaborators, right? We've done Beyonce, we've done Mo Salah, we've done, some of our biggest talent, but also wanting to acknowledge like Impossible is Nothing could be, you just kind of getting up after a hard day, and putting on your shoes and, going to face your day when you don't feel like it. So it's really a campaign that's trying to humanize, the people that we idolize and see that, they came from these quote unquote impossible beginnings and brought their biggest dreams to fruition and hopefully inspire people to try and strive to do the same. So it's a really cool campaign. My team was on it at the inception of it and trying to help develop that, and how are we going to tell that story and what's it going to look like. So yeah, it's really cool. It's really cool to see it out in the world now too.
That's dope. That's super dope. What does when I say Impossible is Nothing, what's the first thing that comes to mind for the three of you? Nobody else is going to say KG. I know that, at least.
Not Nick, not a Bulls fan.
Hey, that's why I said KG, because I didn't like his face for so long.
Come on. That's so funny. I mean, when I think about Impossible is Nothing, and I don't mean to make this sound like kind of ominous, right? But when I think of Impossible is Nothing, I think about my job in recruiting and the fact that in my opinion, I have like the best job in the world. I get to help students find jobs. We get to find the best talent, and people work years to try to get into a company like Adidas. And it's amazing when you get to offer someone a role. They move to Portland, right? Like they kind of up their lives. They have this new beginning, and it's like the kind of this dream come true. And it's really, really impactful to be on the other side of that and kind of help kind of those conversations happen. But one thing that people don't really realize is recruiting is really tough on the other side of it. And you get hundreds of applicants per role, and you can only offer it to one person. And so when I think of Impossible is Nothing, I think of how many times in my role I have to face rejection in that way of providing feedback to candidates who didn't get selected or students who didn't get the internship. And it kind of takes its toll on you. And so that's that's kind of where my mind goes originally, but then it's okay, how are we going to kind of work towards reaching those goals, and how are we going to use that as motivation to propel you into your next step? And I sat down with kind of a mentor and someone who spoke to my internship class again back in 2017. And she was a guest speaker at this event, and I got coffee with her afterwards. And I just remember hearing about her story, and she kind of bounced around from role to role, and her path to the brand wasn't linear. And I was like, how did you keep your perspective, and how did you face rejection so often, and now you're here? And she said, the best advice she ever got was the fact that no doesn't mean no. Sometimes no just means not now. And that phrase stuck with me. Like,
I love that.
Almost every day in my job,
Mm-hmm.
about how taking that as not a closed door, but has an opportunity just to pivot and keep walking down the hallway to the next opportunity. And, every no you hear is just getting you one step closer to hearing that yes. So I go on that rant just to say, when you think about impossible is nothing, is sometimes as a young student, you might think that getting into this company is really daunting. It's impossible. It's years and years away. But there's so much access. There's so much excitement and kind of connection that you can make now that will open those doors in the future for you. So just kind of keeping that perspective is going to be super important in me and my role, just focusing on the yeses I do get to give and not the nos that I have to give sometimes. It just makes it so sweet, when you get to be, on the other side of that. So that's how I really connect with that campaign. I love it. I think it's really personal, and hats off to all the teams, Bernie's team and every other team that worked on it. It's really fun to watch it kind of come to life. But
yeah. I love that. So I have a question, and Dion, the guy that set this all up, the mastermind behind the scenes, he helps me out with a podcast and just kind of figuring out what questions to ask and figuring out like a staple question to ask. And I'm going to ask it. It's not branded or anything like that, but it's interesting because I get a lot of different like obscure types of answers. So we're going to go Nick first, then Bernie, then Collin. Cool for answers. Cool. So the question is, when it's all said and done, what impact do you want to leave on the world?
Oh man, I think if you had asked me this earlier in my career, I would say like I want to make like the coolest, most inspiring art, all that stuff. And I think the older I get and the more I'm in the industry, I think the thing that I have really started to gravitate towards is, helping people find these opportunities. It's actually like really like teaching, mentoring. That stuff is so important to me now. Is like, I don't do as much art and production as I used to do. And I think really it's just becoming more about like showing people that it is possible to get where you want to go, helping people see those opportunities like we were talking about earlier. Is like, there are so many more opportunities to get into companies, like letting people understand that and knowing that like, when you're first starting out, everything seems so daunting, everything seems so big, and like you're somehow like expected to know all the answers, and like that's extremely stressful to be like, I'm going out in this world and there's so much that I don't know. And it's just helpful. I think for me, I had a great mentor or somebody that saw potential in myself, and that changed everything for me. So I think the older I'm getting, the more that I want to do that. I want to get back to that, because that was such a big part of when I was starting out, was just somebody taking the chance and seeing the potential that I had and giving me the opportunity. Because like we were saying, that like sometimes when you're starting out, these jobs say like you need 5 years experience or whatever, and you're like, I don't have any. I'm trying to get that experience. Really, it just takes one person to like give you that opportunity, and it really just takes one person to believe in you, and that can make all of the difference. So that's kind of the impact that I want to give. Is I want to give as many of those opportunities as I can.
I love that.
What a perfect answer. No, but I'm very much in the same realm, because much like our whole conversation, I didn't know this job existed until I found myself in it. I didn't know someone who looked like me, who came from the city I came from, could be doing the things that I am doing. And so I always want to be, the person who holds the door open for whoever's behind me, So I think I want to find as many opportunities as possible with the platform that we have, because we are so fortunate to be here to facilitate that for others, whether it's through my professional work, whether it's through like even just showing up as a Black artist. I'm a muralist outside of work, but I try to incorporate those two worlds and show, hey, whether you want to do the artsy thing, whether you want to do the design thing, or any goal that you have, if you're willing to put in the work, you can achieve it. And I just want to, like Nick was saying, be a mentor to as many as possible to just give them that push. Even if I don't know the answer, if you just need like a little push or encouragement, I want to be that person. So.
Well, I'm just going to copy and paste. Yes to both. I mean, I love what you both said. And I, again, kind of in my situation, kind of what I started the call with saying is I had a lot of people looking out for me, for my internship, and not just opening the door, but just having that conversation even was life-changing for me, right? Of just them thinking about me, looking out for me. And so when I think about what I, kind of maybe like a legacy or something that I want to live is doing that for someone else, and knowing that there's so much power in community. There's so much power in looking out for one another and helping each other out, that, even just opening a door for, maybe it's a student along the way who hasn't had the opportunity yet, doesn't have work experience, but gets to be a part of our internship program, and then they crush it and they get a full-time job. And then 5 years later, they're reflecting back and they're in this position, right? And it's, to me, like that would be just absolutely life-changing. And I think it's an opportunity for me in my current role, obviously helping students. I love it. It gives me so much energy and drive. But our company culture is made up of people, and the people really get to kind of dictate and drive a lot of what we stand for and what we do. And so for me, I really want to leave a legacy where the next generation entering the brand leaves it better than even they found it. And it just kind of continues to build that positive, change and that positive momentum. So if I can do that for one person, that is more than enough for me. But even, a few people would just be awesome. So for me, it's just, I want to look out for somebody the same way that I had so many people looking out for me and before I got started.
Well, I appreciate the three of you joining me today and just having a conversation about obviously just how breaking into the industry, but I feel like we talked about so much more at the same time. I'm excited to see the new round of interns at Adidas and what they end up doing, and then hopefully more and more interns to come from there. So I'm super excited to see that, and I'm super excited to see hopefully some interns out of sneaker school too. So I appreciate the three of you guys, and thank you everybody for joining us today.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Izzy.
Yeah. Thank you guys. This was great.